Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 46 of our weekly stitch along for 2024. Now this is part 2, as those of you who are following along weekly know, of looking at Kantha, because last week we did, I showed you some Kantha stitching, different embroidery stitches used in Kantha, and encouraged you to make a little sampler and practice through the week. So this week it probably comes as no surprise to hear that I'm going to invite you to stitch a little Kantha inspired embroidery piece. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of the traditional motifs used in Kantha, and then you can either take inspiration from one of those or several of those, or you can make something entirely different just using the stitches. Actually, if you've got this book that I showed you last week by Ekta Kaul, or if you look up Ekta Kaul's Instagram account and look at her work, I'll just show you in the back, you will see that her Kantha work is very contemporary. Is she in the back here somewhere? There's lots of different artists referenced in the back. Here we go. This is a piece of her work here, mapping a walk that she does around Osterley in London. You see it's very contemporary, but strongly rooted in the Kantha tradition. So you could do something like that, you know, you don't have to do a inspired, you can do loosely inspired by or more closely inspired by, absolutely up to you. But just to, you know, go back to the root, the source as it were, some of the most common motifs seen in Kantha are the lotus or mandala, which is often at the centre of a piece, of a quilt, which can take many forms. This one you see is quite botanical and you know, flowery, means the same thing, but you also see them quite geometric. Several weeks or months ago we looked at mandala in our weekly project, and I produced one that was quite geometric. It wasn't really recognisable as a flower, so you can do any variation of that. Another common motif, and the one I think I'm going to take inspiration from, is the tree of life. So here's one which is upside down, and which has got, you see, lots of the little circles with the spiral stitch and the wheel stitch, and the leaves I think are done with the couching stitch, though it's hard to tell without getting my nose right up against it. You see there's a spiral, different motifs stitched with pattern darning within a circle, and the leaf shape, and you know, this big leaf shape at the top. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. Here's another tree of life done more differently, more sort of representative. There's even little roots coming off the bottom. Do you see? Do you see? Another common motif is the paisley motif. Now I'm going to put a link in the description box, which is, if you look under next to the title of the video, the little word more, if you click on there, a menu will drop down and you'll see everything that I say is in the description box. That's where it is. Just saying that because sometimes some of you ask. Anyway, a link to a podcast discussion about how Paisley, which is a town in Scotland, came to be the word that refers to this motif in traditional Indian embroidery, which is actually originally inspired by a date, the date palm tree. So I'm not going to, you know, it's a long story. I'll put a link to a podcast if you're interested to go and listen about it. So other motifs you can use are animals, commonly elephants. You see the big elephant here with the gentleman on her back. Elephants with small ears, Indian elephants. African elephants are the ones with big ears, so you know. Little tiger. Now these little figures, Jude Hill does a series called Fantastic Beasts that remind me very much of the figures you see in Kantha. Here this one's done with jali stitch, and is there another tiger on here? Can't see any. No, I think that's the only tiger. And horses. See here a horse. Fish. You often see fishes. And birds of different kinds, you know, just kind of folk arty birds, or it could represent a specific species. This one here's got a little thing on its head that makes me think it's a peacock. Ah yes, it's got a tail, it's definitely a peacock. You know, all birds have tails, but you know what I mean. I said fish, didn't I? So, and more sort of abstract geometric-y florals and leaves, anything like that. So I've done a pin. If you were stuck for inspiration and you go Googling, you'll go down a huge rabbit hole, and you know, feel free to do that. But I have made for you a board on my Pinterest account, which I'll also link in the description, where I've put what I hope is kind of a broad spectrum of traditional Kantha images. So if you want to go and have a scroll through that, you know, if you want to find something there. Or alternatively, like I said, you could just draw something yourself, or just stitch something yourself without pre-planning, using the stitches. You know, it's very much you do you. So I'm going to do a tree of life. Now I've thought about this. Oh, before I forget, there's a lovely interview with Ekta Kaul on a YouTube channel called Just Get It Done Quilts with a lady called Karen. I shall also put a link to that in the description. Because this is going to be a lot of stitching for me, and I think if I sat here and did it live, it would probably be, you know, 3 or 4 hours, which I think is probably stretching even your patience, because you're very patient with me. So there probably will be some editing or some, you know, some stop-start, but I'm going to get myself started, sort of give you an overview of what I'm doing, go and do some stitching on it, and then come back and do some more, and so on. So I'm starting this in the morning, so I've got all day to work on it. So what you will need, I'll put the book away, Catherine. What you will need is a cloth to stitch on. Now, same as last week really, you need some layers. You can of course use a hoop if you're happier using a hoop. If you look at old Kantha quilts, you'll see that there's puckering, and in fact when you come to do the quilting at the end, the puckering is desirable because it's part of the effect. But if you're struggling, you know, with especially when doing the spirals and things like that, and you want to use a hoop, it's absolutely fine. You go for it. I've got here a little sandwich of the top piece is a bit of very fine linen, and I've got some cotton gauze in the middle, and I've got a bit of old hanky, which I think is polywolly cotton, but it needles okay, on the back. So I've created what I hope is a nice, soft, but reasonably sturdy. You see, I've got a couple of layers of the gauze. Can you see? Can you see? So just create something that feels nice. I would say, you know, just sandwich it together without stitching it, without basting it, and then get yourself your needle, your embroidery needle, and just try sewing through it and see if you think it's pleasing. And that is, you see, I tested that. And then once you've done that, you can do some invisible baste if you like, or you can do ordinary basting, which you have to take out, or, you know, whatever, something just to hold the layers together. That's redundant to put it in the orts. So you need a little scrap, you know, a little, you know, a mini quilt, a mini little quilty quilt. Just to remind you, a few people asked for a list in the comments. Now here's my list that I showed you last week. So hopefully if I leave it there front and centre, if you want to read it, write it down, whatever, you can pause the video and write and copy that down. So at the top here are the stitches that I didn't show you but I referred to, that we've looked at elsewhere. These are in the Crazy Patchwork stitches, which is in the playlist, in the Slowstitch weekly playlist. And then at the bottom here are the stitches that I did show you last week. So hopefully if I get my hands out of the way, that's you know, you can take a screenshot or just pause and copy it on a bit of paper, which is what I do because I don't know how to do screenshots. So those are the stitches. Now you don't have to use all of the stitches, you don't have to use any of the stitches, you can, you know, you do you. This was just to give you some tools in your toolbox, if you like, if you didn't already have them there. So here's my little bit. Now you could go one of several ways with this. You could either get yourself a soft pencil or a Frixion pen, you know, one of those pens that writes on cloth, and having drawn your design on a piece of paper, transfer it onto your cloth. You know, if you wanted to trace it over a window or something, I would obviously do that on the top layer before you basted it. Or you could just draw freehand on your cloth, whatever outlines you wanted, whether it was a paisley shape or a bird or whatever. Or you could not draw at all and just go for it, you know, just if you were doing Tree of Life, for example, like me, you'd maybe start stitching a stem and then start adding the motifs. And I think that final way is what I'm going to do. I probably will draw some circles for my spirals here and there, and I might draw some parallel lines for the borders or, you know, whatever. but I'm going to just kind of be a bit, make it up as I go along-ish with it. Bearing in mind that I want to do something inspired by the Tree of Life, and I want some spirals and some leaves and so on. And you see how my videos get so long. That's 10 minutes and I haven't picked up a needle yet. So you need your background, you need a needle that you're comfortable with stitching with the threads that you choose through the cloth that you choose. I'm going to use a slightly bigger needle than I normally use. It's still an embroidery, I think that's a size 8 with a big eye and a sharp point. And I'm going to use embroidery floss. I'm not going to use those Indian threads I used last week because I still haven't got round to sorting out the colour running issues. Look at this lovely nest of threads. This is a huge, great tangle. This was sent to me by Vicky. Thank you so much, Vicky. It wouldn't obviously fit in my little orts tin, so it's gone into this eco-dyed twine basket. So I'm going to pull threads from this. It also smells really yummy, like a scented candle or something. Anyway, but anyway, it's treasure. So some thread, I'm going to use 3 strands of embroidery thread. You could use cotton pearl or, you know, whatever you like. Colour-wise, traditionally they are red, blue and black, but you often see green and gold and, you know, other colours as well nowadays. Again, it's very much you do you, whatever colours you like. So all that being said, my Tree of Life, this is a bit square. I might cut it a little bit more rectangularly. Sorry for the clutter. I have to cut because I can't, you know, it's hard to tear several layers. And the hope that I'll keep that because that, you never know, that'll fit in my journal, I think so. So I think I'm going to just start with the stem because that will give me some structure. So I'm going to start with green, why not? Stems are green, and see where we get to. And it's very apparent that because I'm working from this lovely big tangle, I might not have enough of the same, you know, the same colour of green, but I don't think that matters either. To me, that gives life to the piece, and you do see that as well in traditional, you know, actual old Kantha quilts. Obviously, if they've pulled the threads from the edges of saris and so on, they can't go out and buy all the thread they need for a project. They just use what they have, and that kind of gives it character, I think. So, but again, that's you do you, personal taste. It'll take me a little bit longer to sort out my orts. This video, children, is going to be a week long. I don't know why I called you children, because I sounded all teachery. Come on, thread. There we go. That'll do, pig. Right, so what stitch am I going to use for the stem? I mean, you know, if you wanted to plan all this in advance, then again, you can absolutely do that. I think I'm going to use stem stitch. It's a bit of a no-brainer, but I could equally have gone for running stitch or marla stitch or chain or stitch, cable stitch, a magic running, a double running stitch, yeah, any, but I'm going for stem stitch. So I'm going to stay in a little bit from the edge because I do think I will want to stitch a border. Actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to draw a border. Sorry for the glary ruler, just to make sure I don't stray into the edge. So I'm going to come in about 3/4 of an inch or so, and just with my soft pencil draw myself a border, which is not going to go all the way around because of that raggedy corner, but I don't mind. Just so I remember and don't get carried away, and you know. Also can help you with placement a bit as well if it bothers you that things are sort of centralised and so forth. Right, there we go. Now start stitching, Catherine. So I think I want my Tree of Life to sit on something like a little hill or something like that. So I'm going to come up a bit from the base, and I also obviously want to leave room at the top for some kind of motif, so it's going to be quite a short stem. I'm not going to tell you the stitches, how you do them, because hopefully you've all done your homework. I'm thinking as well that there's something else I want to show you regarding Kantha, and I don't know whether to do it next week or in a later week. We've only got 6 weeks left, I think. As I've got another idea for next week, actually, that somebody sent me. So we'll see. Anyway, giving you a little, what do they call that when you say things to tempt people? Not spoilers. I don't know. So I'm going wibbly apparently with my stem, but you could equally do it straight. So it's actually a nice morning. Well, it was. I've just looked out of the window and it's gone all grey again. I just took Stella out this morning and there was blue sky and sunshine, although I do think it had rained a bit in the night, not that I heard it. I just think that's long enough, so I'm just going to shoot through to the back, and I want to do some little branches, so I'm just going to weave myself back down a little way. And the woods are absolutely beautiful at this time of year. I just love it. You know, the leaves turning. And, oops, I need to turn it the other way up. Talking of leaves turning, my stem needs to turn. So I'm just going to do a little side stalk or branch or whatever you want to call it. I like to work like this rather than drawing things. You know that about me. It's not the right way or the wrong way, you know, it's just my way. Because it takes the pressure off myself to... I find if I start drawing something on the cloth, which I do sometimes, you know, you've seen me do it. That's why I'm saying I prefer this, not that this is what I always do. I'm going to end off and start again because it's quite a big way to jump. But I find that it's more, yes, that it takes pressure off you. If you have a design, even if you draw something beforehand, I mean, you can take that as a guideline. It probably depends on different people. If you take it as a guideline and you're not striving to make it look exactly like you're drawing, that would be my preference. But now, do I want these to be in pairs? Yes, I think I do. I want them to be in pairs. But otherwise a drawing can, you know, it sets up an expectation. That's what I'm trying to say. But so just think, I would invite you to think about things like that, you know, when you make those decisions, when you're working. Make the decision consciously rather than just doing what you've always done or what someone else has told you to do, me included, obviously. Or, you know, that to me, again, is part of Slowstitch. It's just being aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you like it or not. And I know of people who've done things for years in a certain way because they haven't really thought about it. And sometimes that's fine and they like it, and other times they don't like it doing it like that. I can remember when I made proper quilts, I never really liked sewing the binding onto the front of the quilt by machine. I liked the you know, the process of turning the binding to the back and whip stitching it down. And I'm talking about when I made quilts by machine. There was just something about that process that I didn't like, but I did it because that was the way it was done, in inverted commas. And then I, at one point, stopped myself after years and thought, oh, what am I doing? I don't need to do this. I don't even need to put on a binding if I don't want to. And there are other ways of finishing quilts that people use. And then you think, what's the purpose of what I'm doing? Well, it's to hide and protect the raw edges. Well, how can I do that in another way? And it turns out that you can do it in any number of ways. I'm going to come down here and do another little stem stitch side branch thingy bob. So yeah, I hope you have fun with this, and I'll be very interested to hear and see what path you've gone down. You know, whether you've gone down the traditional motif paths or if you've come up with something inspired by and using the stitches. And I must say that for me, and I've done things like this before, or any motif that I'm then planning to do what's called a Kantha 4 around the Kantha quilting. There's the Kantha quilting part that I really love. So I have to stop myself from jumping ahead in my head to that. Let's hurry up and get this thing embroidered so I can go and do the nice part. No, I must make myself enjoy this. You know what I mean. Which was, if you watch the elephant rice bag videos, I think there were 2, weren't there, a few weeks ago, I stitched around the outlines of the elephants like that. And when you come to do that part, there are different ways that you'll see it done traditionally. The most common way is outlining the motif and then just working out and out in concentric lines. But you can also just work horizontally or vertically through the whole piece, quilt, whatever, and miss out the motifs, you know. And you also see geometric shapes stitched into the background concentrically, circles or squares or triangles or things like that. Right, so there's my little stem. Doesn't look like much, does it? So I think I want to put sort of centrally a little circle. So I'm going to get my handy dandy thing and do a little circle. I don't want to sit it on the stem. I think I'm going to do a couple of leafy things on the stem. So I'm going to put it about ½ an inch above the stem, I think. It's gone a bit egg-shaped, but that doesn't matter. That's not in shot, is it? Because it's glary. So now I'm going to need to find a colour in this loveliness. Shall I have red or blue? I'll see what comes out first. Do be careful, by the way, of any red thread. You know that happened with my Indian thread last week. Red thread and fabric, new fabric, is notorious for having unfixed dye. And I said last week about just soaking it in water. Somebody said in the comments you can soak it in water to which soda ash has been added. And I do know that soda ash is used for with Procyon dyeing. So it's very possible that that is a good tip if the soaking in water doesn't help. This is variegated, look. You see? Do you see? Do you see? Anyway, I think I will use it. Is that 3 strands? Yes. Put that back in there. So I think I'm going to make a start on this spiral. Just give you a couple of extra tips about it that I've realised stitching about 20 of them through the week here and there. And then I'm going to go away and do that because they take quite a long time. The first thing is to make your first round of stitches quite big. So in a circle this size, which is a shade less than an inch across, I probably want to aim for no more than 6, maybe even only 5 spiral, you know, stitchy, spirally things. And I might even draw them. And then the space between I'm going to make about half the width of the stitch. 2, 3, 4, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, I need to squeeze another one in there. My brain hurts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's it. So that's my first round. And I don't think there's any shame in putting little dots to make sure you're spaced. Being able to see them again is sometimes more of a challenge. And this little spiral will stand out much more in this little piece because it's front and centre and it doesn't have any other little spirals around it. What have I done now? I've gone to the wrong mark. Never mind. But if you did a big piece with spirals all over, like I talked last week about Judy Martin's piece called Starry Starry Holy Holy, you wouldn't notice discrepancies, would you, in the individual ones? And you see that's not good, is it? Because that's going to have to come out now. Anyway, those are okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, some thread, even if you don't wet it, can, as you saw with that stuff. And do be careful if you're using one of those blue pens that you need to wet to get rid of, to get rid of it with red thread. Do a little test first. Oh, I've really got my brain in a stew. Now I can't tell which is which. Which mark is which. Okie dokie. I've got all these little eyelashes now. This is what overthinking does to you. I should have just gone on and done it and just seen what happened. Right. So if you have to pull your thread through, especially if you've got stranded floss and it's not laying nicely together, just then pull the cloth back again. So I'm now round and I've got 6 shapes. So the first thing is I then go round again. This is just what I've discovered. You may have discovered other things. Being, matching the stitch, not moving anything or making anything smaller. So 2 complete rounds of stitches that are, as near the same length as I can get them. I'm making sure I'm staying in shot. And then the round after that is when I start either making them shorter each end, if I want to do the wheel thing, or start shifting them slightly forward if I want to have the spiral effect. But while I'm making those stitches, I'm looking not at the stitch itself but the space in between and trying to keep the space consistent. The size of the space should stay the same-ish. So I'm going in there. So now I'm going to creep forward ever so infinitesimally slightly. And the same at the other end of the stitch, ever so slightly forward. I mean, it's the barest hair. Because if you jump too quickly forward and shorten your stitches too quickly, that's when you don't have room to get to the middle. So I think I'm moving forward not even a 1/16 of an inch, not like half a millimetre, a hair's width. And I'm looking at the spaces in between the stitches as I go around, rather than the stitch itself. See, that space there's got a bit small. because my spacing was out to begin with, because my pencil marks did me more harm than good. I do really think I would like to get a cloth and just stitch these on and let them be, you know, not stress over each one, just stitch them. And I think that's the best way to learn how to judge. Just sit and stitch loads of them and let them, you know, if you run out of space before you get to the middle, then so be it, you stop. If you, you know, if it puckers because you pulled too tight, so be it. Just a whole great big sampler of spiral stitching. Whether I'll do it or not is another matter, because, you know, we all have lots of things we'd like to do, don't we? Not time to do them all. I just like to let these ideas float, and if they float to the top, then great, and if they don't, then apparently I didn't want to do it that badly. So now I'm just looking at the spaces in between the stitches and trying to keep them somewhat even. And as I go around, I'm just moving forward a little tiny bit. So as you keep that space the same width, by definition, because you're going in on a circle, the stitches will get shorter as you go. Okay, I'm coming to the centre of my spiral, or as far towards the centre as I can get, and I find that I can get 1 or 2 more rounds in if I then switch to stab stitch, because the distance is so short that it's hard to, you know, take the stitch in one movement. So I'm just going to do another little round of teeny tiny stitches, and I don't think that's, you know, I'm happy enough with that. And then I'm going to see what I'm going to do next, which I think might be some leaves, so I might put another round around this, I don't know yet. I'm making it up as I go along, folks. I think that'll do, pig. So you can either just leave the centre open like that, and there's not pencil marks I made are slightly annoying, or you can put, you know, put something in the middle, or satin stitch, or whatever you like. You see both in traditional Kantha, the middle's filled in or just left open. But, you know, do whatever you think. So there we go, that's quite sweet just as it is actually. It's like a little lollipop flower. I feel like putting some blue in it. And get some of this lovely blue, sort of an Air Forcey blue. That's quite a long bit. Let's find the end. I think I might do some little leaves first, and with pattern darning. That's way too long, even for me, so I shall cut it. Dear Henry, let's get 3 strands off. So I'll draw the outline of the leaves, and then I'll do the pattern darning, because I like that the more I played with it in the week. You know, I think I said last week that it wasn't my favourite thing, but the more I messed about with it, the more I liked it. And actually I liked it better as a filling in of a shape, rather than doing it in a, you know, just in a line. On the sampler I did it just as a line, just to show you. But I think it just really comes into its own when you use it as a filler. And also I still like the Convent couching that I showed you. I will do some of that on here as well, because I really like that. Right, so let's put a knot in this first. I think I'll do 2 little leaves coming up here, just to kind of, I might do them as if they're kind of nestling, you know, as if the flowery thing, the circly thing is nestling in them. And I'm not going to get hung up on them being symmetrical. And that one's much longer and thinner than that one, but that's alright. So I'm going to go up the middle first, from point to point. I think that's the best way, and then fill in the sides. So the pattern darning, if you remember, is when you take a long stitch on the front and then 1 thread of the cloth, and then again and again. I'm taking slightly more than 1 thread, but I can't see to do differently. And again. All the threads lie together and then make it lie flat, and then I'm going to go through to the back on the point. And I'm going to do that all in my stitched shape, and I'm going to stagger the you could have all the little threads lining up if you wanted to, but I think I'm going to stagger them. I'll just let that look better. I'm not necessarily, you know, evenly stagger them, just make sure they're not lined up. It's my only criteria. Hope you can still see if you need to, so I've picked it up so that I can see. And the rippling, don't worry about it, you know, if it does, I mean, pull it back and, you know, do your best. But when you come to do the Kantha quilting around the edges, it'll all, at the moment there's a big contrast between your heavily stitched area and your unstitched area. The tension is, you know, in huge contrast, but when you stitch the background as well, a lot of it will be sorted out. The other thing about this pattern darning I realise is it's much easier to pick up your threads if you're working with the grain of the cloth on the bias. On this linen in particular it's a bit more challenging. But anyway, we're getting there. So I'm going to fill in this leaf and the other leaf with the pattern darning, and then I'll be back again for the next bit. Okay, so I've done my 2 leaves, and I also took the liberty of doing 2 little roundy wheelie things here and here. The same principle there. There was only 6 spokes, whatever you call these triangle-y things, per unit, and I started with quite a long stitch and a small gap. I did 2 rounds with the stitch the same, and then after that I tried to focus on the gap to keep the gap the same width, and I got pretty close to the middle. I don't think the goal is to get completely into the middle unless that's what you want to do, and then you'd have to start with even bigger stitches, and you know. But anyway, I think they're perfectly fine and dandy-o. I'm quite happy with them. So the next thing, I want to do more leaves and things, but I thought I'd put my little hill in. So all I've done is drawn some diagonal lines to the 2 corners where I made the border. Can you see? Can you see? I'm showing you something. Look up. Some of you like me saying look up, but I feel bossy saying it. So if you like it, then look up, and if you think it sounds bossy, then please excuse me. So I've just drawn lines from the base of my stem to the 2 corners to make this little triangle-y shape. So then, since I want to do the jali stitch, you know, the little V's, I'm going to draw some lines, some horizontal lines. Without being too finicky about how far apart they are, but you know, just sort of eyeballing. Probably there. That'll do, pig. So I don't know what's going to happen there at the tip. We'll see. I might just do that as a, you know, not really a proper jali stitch, but just a stitch, you know, just some straight stitches to make a little summit to my little hill. And then go back down here and start doing jali stitch proper, so to speak. No, the angle's now too. I'm going to have to take that out. I shouldn't have followed my drawn line. See, that's the trouble with lines. Sometimes it makes you go wrong. The angle's too acute to get the V shape. So I shall try again. So I want to come out on the top somewhere. I'll come out there. I think I'm just going to do jali stitch, and then if I want to do something around the edges to make it look more like a hill, then that's what I'll do, but I'll decide that later. So I'm just going to do the jali stitch in the proper rhythm of keeping the needle going in the same direction all the time. And then see where I end up. I guess that's kind of what I mean about using lines as guidelines rather than... So now I think I'm going to go down there. And then when I come back to the other side I might finish that off like that as well. So now I need to do it the other way, which I think it's easier to turn it round. That's not right, Catherine. Is it? No, done it wrong. Oh dear, I can't remember. To be honest, that was me being a little bit, you know. I thought, oh, jali stitch, I don't need to practice that. That was easy. And I can't remember how to do it. I need to come that way, don't I? So I need to come up there. Talk amongst yourselves while I figure out the jali stitch. Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? But I've missed off the beginning one. That's it. Sometimes your brain just lets you down, doesn't it? But that's alright, we can sort that out. We can just fill that in afterwards. So I'm going to just go up there and finish that off. And then go back down there and carry on. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm just going to, sorry, I was thinking, I'm going to do what I said and just do them somewhere within that framework that I drew, and then go back afterwards and if I need to do some filling in, then so be it. I think it's actually nice to do jali stitch in a border or over a longer line, because you get the rhythm of it's nice, but then I forget the rhythm of it when I've only done a few and have to change direction. That's better, isn't it? So now I'm on a line. I'll be fine till I get to the end. I'll have to work out how to turn around again. Oops, it's not helpful. Oh no, I've missed one there. That was me getting slapdash. Never mind, we'll just go back and fill it all in, and nobody will be any the wiser apart from you all watching me, and you won't judge me, I know. So I've gone quiet now. Well, anyway, I don't really need to show you jali stitch because I've already shown you, and I'm sure you're much better at it than I am. So I'll go and finish this and sort out the edges, and I'll come back for the next bit. Okay, I've done my jala stitch little hill. I did have to do some, you know, cheating, shall we call it? No, let's not call it that. Some, you know, fancy footwork, fancy stitch work at the sides to make it look right. I'll show you the back. See, I jumped around quite a lot. But anyway, I'm happy with it now. I've got this little bit of gold left in here. I thought I'd just do something around the edge of this. Maybe baby. Magic or double running stitch. I call it magic running stitch because that's what Jude Hill calls it. So just as a little sort of almost halo or something around the flower. So just keep my stitches somewhere in the region of the same size as the spaces. This kind of intuitive way of working. Yeah, I've said it already, but I just find it much more engaging than working to a step-by-step plan. I mean, I had some planning, some thoughts in my head, and I'd looked at images, and you know, I'll be interested to hear from you all whether you like step-by-step planning, or whether you like everything to be planned, you know, step by step in advance, or whether you like to just wing it completely, or whether you like a bit of, you know, a bit of structure, but room within that structure to change things as you go along if you see fit, if you feel like it. What colour shall I do in there? Tell me what colour. I got this dark green. I was going to use that for some leaves with the Convent stitch. Maybe I'll use that in there as well. It is very much distinguished by having a limited range of colours, you know, rather than other embroidery styles that are a riot of colours. I think sort of more the primary colours and, you know, some secondary colours, but I think that, and that appeals to me. I like the contrast. I mean, these colours are a bit brighter. Maybe the gold's a bit brighter than it would be the green, but I like the look of that on the cream background. Also like being able to thread my needle easily. Yay! Yay me! So I'm going to finish off my nearly said it again, my double running stitch. And then I'm going to do some leafy leafies with the Convent stitch. There's also the whipped or interlaced running stitch, commonly used again. Well, you know, it's on that list that I showed you at the beginning. There's another program with Ekta Kaul, another YouTube video with Ekta Kaul. I'll put a link. I haven't watched it myself yet. It's a good hour long. So you've got the interview with Karen at Just Get It Done Quilts, and you've got this other one that's an hour plus. It's not on Fibre Arts Takes Two, it's on Fibre something. I'll put the link to it anyway. And you've got the podcast about the paisley motif, so hopefully that's long enough for you to make your own little Kantha inspired mini quilt. And you got this video, obviously. I like the look of that. Sometimes you just do things, don't you, and you think, yeah, I like that. That's my magic stitching done. So I've just done that round the top. I haven't gone round into there, although I could have done. So now I'll leave that for a minute attached, because I'll probably just weave it through to where I want to be. It's going to chime 12, I think. I'm just going to draw some leaf shapes on the end of these stems. Slightly bigger and more roundy ones, I think, just for a change. On the other side, something similar. And I'm going to do that with the Convent stitch. So I need to get myself to there. That's not that far. I shall just weave. I'll just slide in between the layers. Hasn't come through, no. So the yeah, I'm going to do it this way up. It doesn't make any difference, I don't think. So the Convent couching, you remember, is when you lay the thread on the full length, and then you come back up and you couch over it as you stitch. And many of you said that you really like the texture of it. At least one of you said you couldn't stop running your fingers over it. It is lovely to have these textural stitches in your toolbox. And, you know, don't be afraid to use them on elsewhere. It's not that Kantha embroidery stitches are only for Kantha, and, you know, crazy patchwork stitches are only for crazy patchwork. That might seem an obvious thing to say, but doesn't always necessarily occur if your mind is set in one, you know, within one realm, that you could introduce things from another realm. Just think of all these things as tools in your toolbox. One person in the private Facebook group, was it Suzanne? Was it you, Suzanne? She did the Wonky Wednesday last week with the string quilt done, you know, wonky. And where that was, if you didn't watch it, that's making string piecing a square and then cutting it on the diagonal, or two squares actually, and then recombining them so that you get a purple-dicular effect. I missed a trick. I should have done it in purple. I did it in darks and lights. Anyway, she did that. So, and then where you join the two triangles back together, there's the line, you know, where they join. I think it was Suzanne, correct me if you're watching and I'm wrong, did marla stitch over the join. I just love to see that, you know, she'd straight away jump to using it in another project. Yeah, so I hope you do think of, you know, everything that we've done as just being adding to your toolbox rather than a project, you know, standalone projects, right, that's done next kind of thing. I hope and I aim to introduce you to all kinds of things through the year, or have introduced you to all kinds of things through the year that you can take from, you know, the things you like and leave the things that didn't speak to you as much, and hopefully some food for thought as well as techniques and ways to work that might suit you better than, you know, ways you may have been made to work in the past. I know many of us have those embroidery teachers in our past, you know, or people who've insisted that the back of the work is as good as the front, and some people like to work like that. I feel I have to say it every time, but, you know, I think I should say it every time. and then that's fine if you like that, but many of us don't like that, and somehow makes us feel that we're rubbish at it, and you know, I don't think we are. I think we have a different way of working that suits us better. Anyway, so this is going to take me a wee while. I'm going to go and finish convent stitching this leaf and convent stitch the leaf on the other side, and then I might do something else around the edges of these, and then I'll come back and do the border with you, and then I can start on the Kantha, you know, the Kantha quilting, the stitching in the background. So I'll be back in a bit, no time at all for you. So I've done my 2 little convent stitch leaves, 2 different greens, because that green wouldn't have been enough. And I think what I'm going to do now, I do want to do something more around these. Oh, and I also put a little triangle, just 3 stitches in that space. It just seemed to be crying out for something. I want to do marla stitch around the border. Now I know marla stitch divided the room. Some of you loved it, some of you didn't like it so much, but I like it. And so I'm going to just give myself a little channel and do the border next, and then I just feel I need to do the border just to set it off, and then see what else I want to do in the middle. So where I've got that raggedy corner, I'm just going to stitch up to it and leave it as if it's got sort of torn off after the, you know, might have happened after the embroidery was done, if you see what I mean. The sun's come out again, and so I'm going to start here and just work my way around. I don't know what I'm going to do in the corners. I'm going to see when I get there. Probably I'm going to fudge it. That will be the technique. So, just wondering if I just go just inside the line. I might want to do some more stitching actually on the line. We'll see. So I did the marla stitch in the video last week, and I also did a little extra video when I came up with what I thought was an easier way to start it off. So if you're still struggling, you haven't seen that video, it's there in the Slowstitch playlist. It's about 5 minutes long, and I think it's just called marla stitch. Oops. So I'm going to do this all the way around my border, and I'm going to go all the way around the border with that, and then I'm going to go around the edges of these with something that I'll tell you about, and then I may or may not do another line, maybe of interlaced running stitch or something either side of the marla for the border. So I'm going to go away, I'm going to do all of that, because I hope it doesn't seem bitty to you, but it feels bitty to me, all this stop starting. And then when I've done all that, I'll come back and do the Kantha quilting on the background with you. I'll obviously talk you through what I've done in the interim, so I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'll talk you through the rest of the embroidery that I've done. I did the marla stitch around the border, and then I decided that that was enough actually, because there's so much going on in the middle. I didn't want to add any more to it. So then I did some running stitches around these little wheels. Just some red running stitches. And I was going to do a double running stitch or a whip running stitch, but when I'd done the red running stitch, I just liked the look of it so much, I just left it like that. And then I did some blue running stitches either side of the stem going up, and then just on the top of the little branches, and then I doubled them. So I did a line of running stitch, and then I did another line of running stitch with the stitches right next to each other, and you see that a lot as well. It's kind of pattern darning, but you know, minimal pattern darning, or stacked running stitch also known as. And then I did, in the blue, I just then went round the leaves, but again I just left it as one line. And I did the stacked running stitch pattern darning type thing also around the motif at the top, but there I did 3 stitches stacked on top of each other. And then I used that same dark gold there to go in between the jali stitch at the bottom, because by the time I'd done all this up here, this jali stitch looked a bit empty and sad and lonely without more stitches with it, so I added some more. So that's all my embroidery done. I'm very happy with it. Now I'm going to do the Kantha 4, it's called, P-H-O-R, which is the stitch that is meant when people say Kantha stitching. And I hope that I've shown you that there's far more to Kantha than that. Because, you know, finally after what, getting on for 3 hours of video, I'm finally doing some Kantha running stitch, Kantha 4. So, like I said earlier, there's many different ways you see it done. You either see the motif just outlined in concentric lines of stitching, or you'll see the stitching going that way or that way. Or you'll see shapes done in the background of concentric circles or diamonds or squares or rectangles or triangles or whatever. I am going to do outlining the motif. Stella's having a little roll, that's the noise you can hear. So I'm just going to start at one side and stitch myself around. And I've got 2 strands now of white embroidery floss that I pulled out of the lovely tangle that Vicky sent me. So I'm just going to come up somewhere. Now in terms of stitching and spacing and all that, you see all different kinds. You see where the stitch and the space is about the same. You see where there's a small stitch on the front and a bigger stitch on the back, and vice versa. I don't know if there's a tradition. I certainly wouldn't say there's a right way or a wrong way. I think it's in the hands of the individual stitchers, you know, that have just done them. And it's come out how it's come out. And you can hear, I always like to pull it up slightly firmly so that you get that lovely ripple effect. And when I'm doing the next line around, I like to make sure that the stitches are staggered somehow, rather than, you know, I mean here, this is very extreme how they're lined up here, but I'm just going to outline, just follow the outline of the shape. And because this is a small piece to sort of keep in scale, I'm going about 1/8 of an inch or so away, but you know, again, it's not, there's no real rule, it's all done by eye. And I'm taking a couple of stitches at a time, which is unusual for me, but it just feels right. Except for when I'm going around the circle, because you know, it's easier to get a curve if you just take 1 stitch at a time. Except for there I've done 2. I'm just doing what I'm doing and that's it. And you know, I said that I was so looking forward to this, and I do love doing this, but I did, once I got into the embellishing and, you know, the fancy stitching, I did really enjoy that. And you see I've gone on, I did more than I intended, or more than I thought I would do, because it kind of sucked me in. Right, so now I'm going to go into this space here. So I'm just going to go on with my stitches, still following the motif, the outline of it. I'm just going to carry on round in this space. And this is always done, nearly always done, in the sort of the same colour as the background cloth, because this is about texture rather than pattern. Although of course you see the subtle pattern, and but you certainly see the ripples, you know, the little hills and valleys that the stitching creates. So when I come back round this little inner space that I've got here, I'm going to carry on going round and round within this space, so I don't have to keep coming in and out every time. Stella's now got her yak milk bone. So I'm just going to go back in and just go round again. I think I'm about 1/8 of an inch apart, but you know, like I said, I'm just being in scale. If it was a great big quilt I was working on, I wouldn't have them so close together. And now I've probably not got enough space to do a circuit, as it were. So instead I'm just going to do a line up the middle of the space. Like so. And now I need to get back out here somewhere. Actually I'm not, I'm going to jump up here. Do you see I went down, I'm behind there. So I'm going to come up here somewhere. So I don't have to go so far with my thread. And yeah, I'm just going to do one line up the middle of that little space. So just judging as you go, you know. I think this is what I find so meditative about it. All these little judgments you have to make as you go along. And I've come up out of there, and now I have to decide, am I going left or right? So I could either go right now and finish all that, or I could go left and carry on and leave that for the next round. I think I'll go left. I'm just going to work my way around the outside of this main flower thing. Whoops. Now here I have to make a decision, because there's a little inward jump there. I'm going to carry on with what I was doing and go in, you know, and stay the same distance away from the motif. I could equally have just gone straight on and left a bigger gap. I don't think there's any right or wrong to any of that. It's just what you think, what feels right. I hope Stella chewing on that bone is not annoying anybody. A friend gave it to her, she really loves it, and it's lasted ages already. Apparently they do last a long time. And apparently it's made of yak's milk. Apparently when it gets right down to a little bit, another friend told me this, you can put it in the microwave, if you have a microwave, for just a few, not very long. If you're going to do it, please Google the proper way, and you know, because I can't remember exactly how long. And it puffs up sort of like a honeycomb, and then they can crunch it up, the last bit. So I'm quite excited to try that, but she's taken a long time to eat it, which is good, you know. She's enjoying it. Yeah, there are many things I love about Kantha. I love the look of it, and the colours, and the motifs, and the stitching above all. But the other thing I love is that it's a domestic craft or art. We can, you know, we can have discussions about what's art and what's craft, can't you? It's domestic, and it's done by women. And I know that applies to many textile arts and crafts, that they're domestic and they're done by women. But they enable women who maybe don't have a voice, generally, to have a voice and tell their stories through this medium of cloth and stitching. And you know, even if you're making something functional, and you know, your creativity comes out, and you want to express, you want to tell something of your story, of your beliefs, of your opinions, of your values, of your, you know, your stories of your community, of your family, or whatever. And that is, I know that's not unique to Kantha. That's not what I'm saying, but that's a strong element of Kantha that I like very much. Just filling in this little inner space as well. And so the cloths are story cloths. I said way back at the beginning of last week, if you remember, that about the etymology of the word Kantha. Where am I going to go now? I'm going to just weave through there. I'll just take a bit on the back so that I don't make a huge thread. You know, that it's not clear. That it may mean rags, but it may also mean story. And I don't see why we can't claim that it means both. I mean, you know, claim that it means. Obviously, the word has come from somewhere. Just because we can't find out how exactly it came about doesn't mean there's no right answer to that. So I'm speaking in a more metaphoric way that we can claim. We can say that it means story, and we can say that it means rags, because it is both of those things. I hope I've expressed that myself there well enough that you understand what I mean by that. And I think over the past year we've talked a lot about cloth as story and stitching as story, or I've talked a lot and you've responded. And, you know, the name of my channel is Cloth Tales. That's for a reason. That's a theme that resonates very strongly with me, the story that the cloth holds. So that can be the story that the cloth holds because it's old cloth that's already lived life. And I've talked about that. Or it can be that you use the medium of the cloth and stitching to tell a story. And that's nothing new, you know, that's been going on for a long time. And not only women, you know, in some cultures it was men who, but largely where it's domestic, it's been, you know, whilst making something practical because you need to, because it's, you know, to care for your family or your home or whatever, you take the opportunity to express yourself and your creativity and your inner story, you know, the story of you. And you see now how the stitching's making all these little ripples in the surface of the cloth. I don't know if you can see. That's because I'm just pulling it up slightly more than I should, in inverted commas, than I should if I want it to lay flat, but I don't want it to lay flat. And I need to get some more thread in a minute. Always trying to squeeze out one more stitch, even though I know I'm going to have to change thread, probably at least twice more. And although this doesn't really tell a personal story as such, this piece of mine, perhaps you have chosen to do that, in which case wonderful. You know, I just chose to do the Tree of Life, and then I've gone where the needle took me, kind of thing. It's the story of the last few hours that I've spent with it, and the decisions that I've made, and why I've made those decisions, and the way it's made me feel while stitching it, you know. The journey that I've undergone while stitching it, from in the beginning I said, or early on, Stella, settle down, boo. Sorry. That I was looking forward to this part, and if you're looking forward to something, there's kind of inherent in that phrase, isn't there, that you want the stage that you're at now to go past quickly so you can get to the thing you're looking forward to. And I was just reflecting on that while I was doing last of the embroidery. And whilst I became aware that I was enjoying it, and I wasn't anymore thinking, you know, let's get to the doing the quilting stitch. I'm just trying to see where I stopped there. Not that it really matters. And that's all part of the story of the making, I think. When you're in the moment and aware of what you're making. And that's why I firmly believe that not all hand stitching is slow stitching. Because you can do hand stitching and you're not in that mindset. Someone said this marla stitch looks like rick-rack braid, and I think that's a perfect description for it. Exactly like rick-rack, especially now I've got this dark red. Sorry, I'm just looking around. It's okay. She's just laying on the sofa, minding her own business. You know, where it's this dark red against this white cloth, it really does look like rick-rack. Rick-rack. Is it called rick-rack in other countries? Do you know that braid that's ziggy-zaggy? Oh, now I'm back to the... turning. I'm back to where I jumped out to confuse me for a moment. It doesn't take much to confuse me, apparently. I'm quite tired. I don't know why, but I had a late night last night. I kind of didn't realise the time. I was stitching and watching a series that just, you know, just kept going on to the next episode. And suddenly it was nearly midnight and I hadn't turned into a pumpkin. Well, it doesn't do me any good to stay up late these days, because my bedtime is usually quite early, well, usually about 9:30. And it's earlier in the winter than in the summer, often 9:30, 10 o'clock. But then I go and read. I go and read in bed for maybe an hour or so. But I just like to, you know, I've let Stella out for her last wee and make sure Fred's got cat biscuits to sustain him through the night. Otherwise he'll come and jump on my head. And, you know, done all the little last minute end of the day things that we do. Lock the door and, you know, all that stuff. I like to have a little tidy round as well, just before I go to bed. Something my grandmother always used to do. You know, if that's where I got it from. If there are things that need washing up, like, I don't know, maybe a cup or a plate from the evening meal, and I think, well, I'm not running a bowl of hot water just to wash those, that's a waste. I'll put them in the sink, and if I've left stuff laying around that I've been working on, I'll, you know, put it in a neat pile. I'll plump the cushions on the sofa and put them all, you know. I just like it then when I come in the morning that it looks tidy. That's just me. I wonder how you are, if you're the same. Or not, or if it doesn't bother you. But I just know that I start the day well then if I come in, especially if I come into the kitchen, I want to make my cup of tea in the morning and, you know, it's reasonably clear. If there are dishes, then they're neatly in the bowl. Maybe I'm just a neat freak. Maybe I just need some order and control in my life because I don't feel I've had it for some time. Who knows? I think I've always been a bit like that now, so I don't think I can blame that. So now I've got to fill in this area because I can't get back through there anymore. That's all done in inverted commas. That's all stitched, I mean. You can tell I'm tired because I start speaking nonsense. Or maybe you don't notice any difference. Oh dear. So I'm just going to keep going back and forth, filling this space in, but still following my contour line. Until it's done. Oops, got a knot somewhere, I think. Can't feel it anymore. So like I mentioned in Park Home Life, I'm rereading Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. And somebody told me that there's a new book of hers which is either just out or about to be out, called Serviceberry, I think it's called. Any Robin Hall Kimmerer fans? Robin Wall Kimmerer, not Robin Hall Kimmerer. Yeah, new book. There is a little knot in this thread, but I'm getting away with it. And now it's safely on the back somewhere. You know when you get those little knots and you manage to just gently pull them through every time, and at one point there, you know, they're gone. Right, so I'm just going to, you see I've got this tiny, I'm not going to go any further in there, maybe I'll just go one more stitch further. But I can't come out again, but that doesn't matter. So I'm just going to jump back out to there somewhere. And then just fill in that last little triangle. So just keeping your stitches roughly the same distance apart and roughly following the shape of the contour. Probably just do one that way and one that way, like so. So you see here, this area, you see how it's a definite ridge in the cloth because that's not stitched and all this is heavily stitched. Whereas here, where I have stitched, all that fullness has been eased out into all these lovely ripples all over the surface of the cloth. So that's why you don't need to worry about puckering with Kantha. It is the nature of the beast. So now I'm going to go, I can hardly see, I'll go back down here I think. So I'm just going to go on how I've been doing and finish filling in all there and all there, and then I shall come back and put it in the journal with you and tell you the words for them. Okay, so that is all my quilting done. My thread, by pure dumb luck, oh sorry, are you wobbling? Ended up in the top right hand corner, so I've left it there. What I love as well is, do you see this little blue dot here? This is on the cotton gauze that I've got inside my quilt, my little quilt. But I just like that little blue dot. Little blue dot. So I've got my journal. I think I'm just going to get away with it being fat enough to go all the way around. But not fat enough, you know, long enough, the cover. Sorry, I suddenly got really tired because I didn't have anything proper for lunch, so what's the time now? Well, it's not 3 o'clock yet. Anyway, I should go and have some, I got minestrone soup out from the freezer to defrost. I should go and have some of that while I edit this video. I put both, sorry, no, I stitched in the one that I said looked like a dog's dinner. I stitched it to the page, and then the other one I just put separately in. Haven't yet decided whether I'm going to attach that or not, or just keep the so-called dog's dinner as a true record. Right, so now I'm onto this page. Whoops, come on. I'm just going to stitch it along the top. Someone asked recently about my giant paper clip. It's gone beyond giant paper clips, this journal, does it? I can, you know, I can manage. I don't think a giant paper clip would help at all. So, having made sure I've only got one page, hands up anybody who's stitched through 2 pages already this year. I haven't done it in this journal, I've done it in the past. Easily done. And just looking if yes, I've got a pencil. So I hope you have enjoyed this little foray into Kantha, and that you'll enjoy following the links to the other videos that I talked about in the podcast. I'm going to go and watch that other video that I haven't seen yet. This evening, I expect. Not doing dangles. Right, there we go. Let's put that safely in the pincushion. Get the pencil. Sorry about my arm. So I've got my words written on this bit of paper. So it's the 11th of the 11th, 24, Armistice Day. K3N Kiss. Flip it up. The backstory is good as well. Look at the backstory. It feels lovely as well. Have a good feel of yours when you've made it. Feel all the texture of the stitching and everything. So this is a paraphrase of a couple of quotes. Well, it's not quotes. They're Ekta's words, but I've kind of jumbled them about a bit. So, without distorting her meaning. Kantha, layers of meaning. There's the title of the introductory part of the book. And then a symbol of love. Actually, they're Ekta's words and some of my words mixed in as well. A symbol of love across generations. And throughout community, I can't see read my own writing, and throughout communities. Telling stories. Telling stories. Holding memories. And expressing emotions. Kantha, layers of meaning, a symbol of love across generations and throughout communities, telling stories, holding memories and expressing emotions. I think I will credit her because I think it's quite a lot of her words in there. Ekta Kaul-ish. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. So that's Kantha Embroidery. So I hope you enjoy making your own little piece. Maybe you've already made it. It's probably not during the time of this video, but you know, who knows. And thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.